There's multiple levels. You basically have grassroots, pro-am, maybe cash competitions, and then top pro. There's a bunch of series for all different ones. Grassroots will be anything where it's just kind of a fun, maybe team tandem, different fun things at like your local drift event. Pro-am, we're taking it a step up. These generally are licensing events. So if you run this series and you place well enough, you're going to get your competition license for whatever series it applies to. And it's changed around the world kind of how stuff works, but generally that's kind of the outline people are following. Cash events, those are coming up kind of more and more these days. Those are more, you'll have pros, pro-am guys, grassroots guys, all sorts of different people coming and driving these kind of one weekend events. And then lastly, pro level, right? So Formula Drift, D1, Formula Drift Japan. So the pro series, those are like the top level peak of competition drifting. So they're the equivalent of, let's say, NASCAR or Formula One, trophy trucks, all those series. That's what we have for drifting, is kind of these series. What's interesting is, in my opinion, there's not really a dominant series. It's not like NASCAR where that's like the one and worldwide everyone knows, or Formula One. What's cool is because this is a budding sport, we have a bunch of great series that are massive, but no one's really kind of taken the crown yet. So it's kind of fun because this is a new sport. We'll see what happens. So if you're wondering how to get into any of these drifting series, for grassroots events, anybody can go. Really, if your car can pass tech, you can get your car to the track, you have a helmet, and you're capable of drifting almost any level, you can go and join these series and drift in them. Pro-am wise, it's very similar, but as you go to higher levels of drifting, the requirements kind of get heavier and heavier. So you're going to have, cars are going to be better built, there's going to be more safety equipment required, you're going to need a bigger budget for tires and gasoline, things like that, because the cars are getting that much more crazy. So Pro-am is another one though. The cash events are the same thing. They're really wide open. And so the reason a lot of these cash events run on smaller tracks, as we've been seeing, is it really closes in the gap. So lower powered cars, you can grip them up and run that course fairly fast. Higher powered cars with a bunch of grip, they're not going to have that advantage and be able to pull away from you. So those are great events if you are lower on budget, less competitive in the car builds, let's say. And then pro level, those cars are just wild. We're talking like 1,000 horsepower, 65, 70 degrees of steering angle, full on racing tires. For pro level, to get in those, you have to get your license. So you can run a Pro-am series like I mentioned earlier and get your license competing that way. You can also petition. So if you have other driving experience or you've done a lot of these grassroots events and you can prove that you're a caliber driver that can run in the series, there's been some drivers that have been in other series such as those, and they've been able to petition and come and compete in the drifting series. All right, so let's break down how drifting competitions work. We're going to start off with the judging. There's kind of a general judging layout and competitions, how they've worked in the past, that a lot of these series have all been following. It's basically a big bracket, you qualify into the bracket, and then they're judging you on line, angle, and style. And so the judging generally works with 3 judges, 1 on line, 1 on angle, 1 on style. Sometimes there's a 4th judge. Line is basically the judges set out before the competition even starts. They set out a layout that they want you to run. They have clipping points. There is a start and a finish. It's not like a race where you're trying to beat the other person and get across the finish line first. It's also usually not a circuit. There's usually a section of a circuit picked out. And so they'll say, hey, here's the start line. We want you to enter here, and we want your back bumper dragging the wall here in this zone. So they'll have zones, which are pretty cool. They'll have them on front and rear as well. And then they'll say, when you come around this corner, we want your front bumper to, just brush across this clipping point. And so they're judging you on how well you stuck to that line. Speed mixed in there. They're not measuring it, but they're looking for you to, swiftly make it through. Angle judge is pretty self-explanatory, but he's looking for you to have basically, and this changes in different series, so this is kind of interesting, but most of them run on judging angle by, they want you to be at maximum angle, but not to slow your car down. So if there's someone that's a little faster through the course and it's smoother, and they're at, let's say, 40 degrees, they may score higher than someone that, throws in a big backy and hits 90 degrees, but then, has to come back to 40 degrees of angle, or it slows him way down. Well, it is interesting though in like D1 where they run like the little electronic box that's doing a bunch of judging. You guys can look more into that, just kind of search D1 GP and kind of how it works. And so sometimes you'll see their cars will be going a lot slower through the course because that's kind of what the box likes. That's kind of something that a lot of people go back and forth on which they like better. Personally, I like driving really fast, but I also like a lot of angles, so I kind of like how Formula Drift and a lot of the series do it, where they want you moving fast. Now, style is not how sick your car looks, or cambered out wheels, or three-piece wheels, or how much smoke it blows out, how it sounds. It's really none of that. Personally, though, I think a great looking car drifting is much better than a shit-looking car. So comment below if you think differently. Style is basically how you did everything, how you put it all together. So it's kind of, was the line and the angle and the speed all look good? Bobble at any certain part, that's going to decrease your style. Did you have a really aggressive entry and swing it really hard towards the wall and it looked scary? That's going to add to your style points. And so they're basically judging out of 100 points, and together they'll give you a score out of 100 points. So that's pretty much competition drifting, but I do want to talk a little bit about like the cars that we're using, because I think a lot of people wonder, like, what is a drift car? How does it work? Depending on the series, they have different kind of rules on what can enter, but we're going to go with Formula Drift since we are in the United States and that's the series that we compete in. They're looking for a rear-wheel drive chassis. Yes, there have been some front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive cars that have been converted, but they generally come in rear-wheel drive in another country. So you can't bring in a WRX STI anymore. They've had that in the series, or a Lancer. That's not allowed. It has to be something that comes in a rear-wheel drive version somewhere in the world, and then you're allowed to use that chassis. And so generally they're looking for a rear-wheel drive car. Trucks, unfortunately, are not allowed. I don't know why. I think that'd be kind of rad. Like, have like a Chevrolet Silverado, like, dually shredding in the track. Comment below if you guys would like to see a truck in the series. Maybe we'll try to petition our way in with a dually. That'd be outrageous. I don't think they even allow rear engine in really any of the series. No, that's not true. They do in D1. Has to be a front engine and rear-wheel drive car, like we said. So the cars, we're not allowed to do tube chassis. In other series, they are a little bit looser with the rules and you can get crazier. But with us, basically from strut tower to strut tower, you're only allowed to do a roll cage and some, I don't want to say basic fabrication for the transmission to fit and to access it, as well as putting fluids through the car, things like that, firewalling. But you're not allowed to do a tube chassis like you'd see as like a dune buggy or a trophy truck. From the front strut towers forward though, but yeah, you can do really whatever horsepower you want, whatever engine you want, pretty much whatever transmission you want as well. So one interesting fact about pro cars is you can't really have any driver assisting mechanisms. I know it's not the right term, but like traction control, even remotely controlling your coilovers. Some people had that for a little while. That's not allowed anymore. Anything electronic that does that. So they're really looking for, the driver to be in full control of the car and no cheating, let's say. Personally, I think traction control and some of that stuff could be to make the cars even more competitive. But if you're wondering why they have some of these kind of weird rules, it's because they're trying to, again, tighten that gap between the higher budget and lower budget team. Because we're not Formula One or NASCAR yet, we're going to get there. We don't have, multi-million dollar budgets. We don't have the massive sponsors quite yet that those series do. And we have a lot of guys that are competing, like ourselves, competing with our own money. We do have a bunch of sponsors, but we're the title sponsor and mainly privately funded, and there are other teams like that. And so it's hard for us to, spend millions of dollars on building our cars and be competitive. So rather than split the series up, they just want to have one big series and kind of tighten that gap and have us all go at it together. All right, guys. Well, obviously, I could talk for hours about competition drifting and just drifting in general. If you guys want to see more how to drift videos or story times, things where we explain drifting, check out some of our other playlists. We'll have those kind of going at the end of this video. But thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button.